Some children in England will soon be able to visit grandparents in their care homes. From April the 12th, babies and toddlers will be allowed to accompany up to 2 adult visitors.
They will be allowed to come to visit at a time, and you will be able to see your granddaughter. Isn't that lovely?
That's smashing.
And there's breaking news tonight about COVID passports. We'll have the details. Also ahead, protesting against new limits on protesting. Demonstrations take place across England and Wales. A family pays tribute to an 85-year-old great-grandmother killed in a dog attack. And
here's Jess Grigg. She's going to fly over try number 5.
England dominates Scotland to open the Women's Six Nations rugby tournament.
This is ITV News with Duncan Gollestani.
Good evening. In just over a week's time, care home residents who have endured a long and lonely year can finally be reunited with their youngest grandchildren. Residents in England will be allowed a second regular visitor indoors from April the 12th, with babies and young children allowed to come along too. The Prime Minister said the easing of restrictions was down to the tireless work of care home staff and the success of the vaccine rollout. Our political correspondent Hannah Miller has more.
I have a great news to give you today.
For Maureen and thousands of others, it's an announcement that couldn't be more welcome.
From 12th of April, you will be able to see your granddaughter. Isn't that lovely?
That's smashing.
An Easter surprise that gives everyone here a new lease of life.
I'm so happy to hear that they will be able to see and to see their excitement as well. And it's a pleasure for me to do that. It's the satisfaction which you get when you see the smile on their faces.
Visitors will still need to wear PPE and have a negative COVID test, though in some circumstances that could now be done at home.
It's extremely tough. It takes a lot of time, administration time for the staff, particularly the testing, because every visitor needs to be tested. But it's the little price to pay for bringing loved ones together.
Loved ones like Rob, who came here today to visit his sister Joan and brought news of his grandson.
It's 5 months now.
Is he 5 months?
Yeah.
This is his third visit since restrictions eased, and he's already seeing the benefits.
I've noticed a difference in her. The last couple of times I've been to see Joan, she's more animated than she has been. It's going to make a lot of difference for Joan, for her quality of life.
You'll get to see your great nephew for the first time.
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
Oh, it means a lot to me. It means everything. I love children. I really do.
And amid the smallest taste of freedom, the government hinted at more to come.
We will continue to do this carefully, step by step, come the summer. I want it to feel much more like normal for those living in care homes and their family going to visit.
And for many, that can't come soon enough after almost a year of isolation, as they look forward to being able to greet more people like this. Hannah Miller, ITV News.
Although daily deaths from COVID continue to fall, every one remains a terrible tragedy for at least one family. Marianne Pilling is one of the bereaved. Finally able to stop shielding due to her Down syndrome this weekend, she must still cope with the loss of her beloved husband Tommy, who also had Down syndrome but didn't make it through the pandemic. Geraint Vincent went to meet her.
Marianne and her mum Linda are looking at some old photographs.
Yeah, it was a lovely day, wasn't it?
Of the day 25 years ago when Marianne married the love of her life, Tommy Pilling.
I'm not just saying it because he's not here. He was one of the most gentlest, sweetest person that anybody will ever meet. Anybody that met Tommy fell in love with him. He was the best son-in-law I could ever have wished for.
Tommy died of COVID-19 on New Year's Day. It was the end of a marriage in which he and Marianne rarely spent more than a few hours apart. They travelled and they danced and they overturned prejudices about the kind of lives people with Down syndrome can expect to have.
People would stand there and they'd go, "Oh, are they brother and sister?" "No, actually they're married." "What?" Really? Oh, never heard of that before. Well, you have now.
In her grief, Mary-Ann has good days and bad days. She's still struggling to understand the pandemic and why it was that Tommy died. She does know, though, that she misses him terribly. You smiled as soon as I said his name, yeah?
He's my husband. He's your husband, isn't he? He'll always be your husband. And so give him squeeze tight. Yeah, squeeze you tight, yeah.
Yeah, I do. And you loved him very much?
Of course I do. I dream about him every day. You dream about him a lot, don't you? Yeah, I do. Yeah. That's right. What did you tell me the other day? You said Tommy comes to see you in your dreams, doesn't he? He does. Gives you lots of cuddles. Yeah. And she always wakes up smiling when she's had these nice dreams.
Mary-Ann is now among the many who've lost the person they held most dear in this pandemic. Her love story was different, but her heart is broken just the same. Geraint Vincent, ITV News.
Back to Hannah now, and some breaking news about those controversial COVID certificates the government has been considering.
Yes, Duncan, the government has confirmed that the COVID status certificates are on their way for entry into some sports events, theatres and nightclubs. To get in, you'll need to prove that you've either had a vaccination, a recent negative test, or what they're calling natural immunity from a positive test within the past 6 months. They won't be needed in shops or on public transports. And those pubs and restaurants that are expecting to open in the next few weeks also won't be required to use these. We don't yet have the details on exactly how it will work, but the first trials get started in the next couple of weeks at the Hot Water Comedy Club in Liverpool. Then there's an FA Cup semi-final and the World Snooker Championship in Sheffield. We can expect to hear more on this on Monday.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hannah. Protests were planned in 25 cities across England and Wales today as part of a national weekend of action against a proposed new police and crime bill. Opponents say the bill would place severe new limits on the public's right to protest. And as Mark McQuillan reports, those are rights that many people hold sacred.
In London and many other cities across the country, they gathered. The tone was calm in central London as hundreds marched to make their point, exercising their right to protest, which they believe will be restricted under proposed police powers.
Most of the positive change that's happened in this country has been brought about by people protesting.
My experience living in London, the police have only been antagonistic, and giving them more power is not the way to make our streets safe.
Protest is a human right and it's very important in democracy, and killing the bill is stupid and we won't stand for it.
A similar stance was being taken elsewhere. From Glasgow to Newcastle and many cities further south, including Bristol, a place where vandalism and violence broke out 2 weekends ago. But today's demonstration was peaceful.
Shame on you! Shame on you!
Back in London, as the day wore on, patience was wearing thin. Officers urging those still protesting to go home as their operation moved to what they described as the enforcement stage.
Well, this has been a largely peaceful day of demonstrations in London, but as police have tried to disperse some of the crowds here at Trafalgar Square, tensions have been rising a bit and a number of arrests have been made as officers look to keep everything under control.
And following some final arrests, that appeared to be the case. But police forces will remain on alert with more protests planned over the Easter weekend. Mark McQuillan, ITV News.
The elderly victim of a fatal dog attack in the West Midlands has been named tonight. Lucille Downer died from her injuries after 2 dogs entered her garden in Rowley Regis near Dudley. The 85-year-old was born in Jamaica and moved to the UK as part of the Windrush generation, spending her working years as a care home cook. Her family paid tribute, saying, "We will miss her dearly." Police have released the owner of the dogs on bail.
Fortunately, these types of incidents are rare. This presented no wider threat to the public. It was a hole in an adjacent premises, so they weren't wild running in the streets. It was contained.
Police in Northern Ireland are appealing for calm tonight after disturbances broke out on the streets of Newton Abbey. 3 cars were hijacked and set alight this evening, and a police van was also targeted. It comes after 8 people were arrested following unrest in Belfast and Londonderry yesterday. And Kenya has reacted angrily to being added to the UK's government travel red list. Its Foreign Office said the decision will have deep and far-reaching consequences for trade, tourism and security cooperation. The delayed Women's Six Nations rugby tournament started today. Not a great start for Wales, who were beaten 53-0 by France tonight, but it was a good day for England, who are favourites for the title. They open their campaign with a 52-10 victory over Scotland, as Chris Scudder reports.
Scotland had never flowered against England in the Women's Six Nations before, and the Grand Slam champions in a shortened format this season because of coronavirus didn't hang around here.
The shove is on.
The Red Roses have made a habit of overpowering all comers, and they were unstoppable again.
One's over the line, try number 3.
It was a special day for Bryony Cleal, winning only her second England cap after a career wrecked by 7 years of injuries.
Cleal, who goes over, popped off by her identical sister Poppy.
But if England's pack were dominant, they also had a flying wing to breach the Scotland defence with the score of the match.
Still going, here's Jess Breach, she's going to fly over the try number 5.
Scotland were thrashed 53-0 in this fixture last season, so this was a welcome excursion across the England line. But any hopes of a comeback were ruined by a dangerous tackle and a red card.
Don't have a mitigating factor, it's a red card.
8 tries for England. It will take a strong team to stop them on the new one-off finals day later this month. Chris Scudder, ITV News.
And finally, Egypt has put on a spectacular multi-million-pound show to celebrate the relocation of some of its greatest ancient rulers. The Golden Parade of the Pharaohs was held to move the 3,000-year-old mummies of 22 kings and queens of ancient Egypt to a new museum. The convoy was made into a national spectacle, the remains transported in climate-controlled vehicles on roads specially repaved to prevent bumps. And that is it. The weather forecast is coming up next, but from all of us here on the Weekend News team, thank you for watching and good night.